Hey everyone, this time on Tim Talks Audio, we're checking out the latest from Waves. This is the L4. Hi, if it's your first time here, my name is Tim. I'm a recording and mixing engineer, and I just want to make things easier for you. Waves is releasing the brand new L4 Ultramaximizer. That's right, L4, the latest iteration in their limiter series. It's taking some of the classic things that we've seen from the other L series limiters and adding in some new features. So let's go over the controls and really how this thing sounds. Let's dive into the DAW. So here it is. This is the all-new Waves L4 Ultramaximizer. This is how it looks in its default state. When you throw this onto anything, it will look like this when you first throw it open. Like we usually do in these plugin videos, we're going to go over all of the controls. If you want to jump ahead to the audio examples, use the chapters down below to skip forward. We're going to go over most of the controls, and we're going to kind of gloss over the controls that we've seen in like the things like the L1, L2, and L3. So we have our threshold on the left-hand side, and this is a slider allowing you to set your threshold. And of course, we have the ceiling on the right-hand side, allowing you to set the output ceiling, right? Makes sense. We've seen this in things like the L2 before. The little left-right button in between, this is a link. We've seen this in the past versions as well, allowing you to set both the threshold and the ceiling at the same time. Underneath, readouts to show what the average level coming in is and how much reduction. We have an attenuation meter on the right-hand side with its numerical value underneath. You'll see this in a little bit. The red will light up with how much reduction is happening. Underneath attenuation is a new feature, and let's start touching into some of those. Here we have upward compression. That's right. The things that we've seen in something like the MV2, the upward compression and the low threshold that we have over there, a similar style process is now in the L4 with upward compression right here, giving us up to, we'll just call this 10 dB. It might not be dB, but it's allowing you to take the low level signals and bring those up, still reducing your dynamic range, but without doing any limiting. You could just use this as an upward compressor while leaving the threshold and ceiling alone if you wanted. Let's continue going over to the right. We're going to jump over mode for just a moment, but now we have a built-in LUFS short-term, long-term, switchable meter just by clicking on the top here, and it will instantly tell you your short-term or long-term LUFS. This also gives you the range, and if you have a true peak value, and you saw when I was clicking long and short, they'll just change places. Underneath, we have our global release control, allowing us to do slower style release. When I option or alt click here, it snaps it back to 1, or I can slow it down with 10x. You can dial your release in however you need for whatever your source is. Then we also have a built-in clipper. This is no clipping. Right in the middle is just having it barely there if you're hardly even using it, and then you can increase to have more clipping happen before the last stage of limiting. And then we have a stereo link control on bottom, allowing you to do stereo linking and any combination of no linking to somewhat linking all the way up to just full stereo link. We jumped over mode. Let's go back to that because in here, I think you'll like this, are 5 different options: modern, smooth, aggressive, safe, and L2 mode. L2 has been so popular and has been used on so many records that in the L4 version, they're now taking the L2 algorithm and its style and sound and throwing it right in here. So if you prefer the L2, but maybe want the upward compression section in here, the L4 has you covered with both L2 mode and the added features. Let's move back to the main interface here. We have gain match, which actually disables the controls for ceiling and the link because now you just set things through threshold. We're going to turn that back off. Delta, we've seen this on other plugins, but essentially what Delta does is it allows you to hear just what your reduction is, the output of that. So think of it like listening to the sidechain circuit, or think of it like listening to your delay send, but you're only hearing it when you send. So when you're getting any kind of reduction, when you have delta engaged, you'll hear that of what part is getting reduced. Next to delta is a button that actually changes the user interface. If you're not a fan of this style, go with graphical. And you'll see here is our threshold. Here is, on the bottom, is our upward compression circuit. We can adjust that right down here. So we have our threshold here. On the right-hand side, this is our ceiling. So everything we had on this side, and as I jump over, these settings will hold true. Look, I have minus 2.4 on my threshold, and my ceiling is closer to minus 5. When I jump back, 2.4 on my threshold, 2.34, and minus 4.9 on my ceiling. And the upward compression is in the same spot. So it really is just an interface change. So you'll see the waveforms coming in and moving from the right-hand side to the left as it's scrolling through time. And you'll be able to dial in your limiter settings as you need from here. Built-in option, and then of course there's a reduction meter on the right-hand side. You can see the red reduction up on the top, just underneath the button. Up on the very top, standard things from Waves, preset browser, being able to copy the A settings to the B side, and then set up A versus set up B, being able to do two different things in the same plugin, so you can see which one is better. Built in, we've seen this before. The little floppy disk, save your preset. You guys know that. Next, we have oversampling built in. So I'm going to drop the drop-down menu. You have off, 2x, 4x, 8x, and 16x. If you need oversampling to reduce any aliasing that may be happening within your session, here's your oversampling. Turn on or off true peak limiting by clicking this button right here. Engage or disengage the dither circuit right here. And then, of course, it has a drop-down so you can set your quantized style from 24 all the way down to 16. Dither type 1, none. Type 2 shaping, things that we've seen on the L2, the L3, and other limiters from Waves. That's all the controls. You're going to like this test on how this thing sounds. This is just a default iteration of L4, so I'm actually going to get rid of it now, and I had it on my reference track, so we're just going to get rid of that as well. Here is the session in question, and I'm actually just going to turn off my L4s. So these are all of my buses for this mix that I'm working on. The song is called Flawed Design, although I spelled it wrong when I typed it in real fast. Don't worry about it. It's on the multitrack site if you want to mix this for yourself. I had some fun putting it together. It's this heavy style with some synthesizers. It's like a metal song. It's got singing vocals. It's got screamy vocals, but it has a lot of elements that in this style song you would probably limit. So that's why we went with it. I have the L4 limiter across all of my buses: drums, sound effects, bass, guitars, synth, all vocals, and my mix bus. But you'll notice on my mix bus, I actually have 3 different instances of L4. And that's for our end example, which is going to be on the mix bus. We have one there where we're just kissing the limiter and getting maybe a dB or so of reduction. Then we have one that's doing a little bit more moderate amount of reduction. It's going to do about 3 dB of reduction. And then the last one is really hitting in and pushing so we can hear how the L4 sounds, and we're going to get 6 dB or more of reduction. So just kissing it, a simple gentle amount, and then kind of really pushing in. And then across all of my buses, it does no more than 4 dB of reduction. I went in and I just kind of want to make sure that all of my peaks were kind of tamed. That's why I used limiters across my buses. So let's get a baseline. This is going to be the balance that I have going on, and I'm not doing a ton of processing in this track. What I'm really doing, and I'll just show you on the sound effects because this is basically the same across all of my tracks, is I do have some console emulation on all of my audio tracks. And then across all of my buses, I do have some tape saturation just to give me some like analog color. Apart from that, I might be doing a little bit of EQ or compression within the channel strips that I have across everything, but I'm not doing a ton. Most of what you're hearing is just a fader and panning balance mix. There's a little bit of EQ just to make some room, and a little bit of compression just to make things like not scream out if it happened. But this is going to give us a nice baseline. Here is our starting point. So you can hear there's a lot going on. We've got screamy vocals. In a little bit, there's singing vocals, and we'll jump forward so we can get to there as well. Big, heavy drums, sound effects, including explosions and drops. We've got synthesizers doing all kinds of stuff. So we got a lot going on. All right, so that was our baseline. Now I'm going to go through my individual buses. You can see I have L4 activated on all of my buses. Here is my drum bus where I've set my threshold and ceiling appropriately. They are different. I needed a little bit more push, so I just used the output and the ceiling to get me a little bit more level for my drums, and I'm in L2 mode. Here's just my drums. So really not doing a ton of reduction, not doing a ton of added volume or anything, just control. That's all I needed. Just make sure those peaks don't go shooting out. Now let's switch over to our sound effects, which is right here. Again, I'm not doing a ton, and if we want to just solo things out. Again, it's sound effects. I just need control. Just don't be too ridiculous when you come in. Clamp down. I also do have some upward compression on here because in the density of the mix, some of the lower level stuff needed to get brought out. So I used the upward compression here, left the stereo link on, no clipping, and I stayed with modern. On our bass, here is our bass settings, and the amount of reduction I'm doing is this. So very little, I'm doing a dB.5. Again, just control. There's a couple spots when you get into the chorus, he digs in a little bit more. I do have a little bit of compression going on with my bass. So the attenuation, again, maybe maxes out at, if it really hits, -4, but it barely even gets there. Now, guitars, here's my settings for my guitars. And again, a little bit of upward compression just to kind of bring them forward and up a little bit more. But you'll see the attenuation is really not going crazy. That -3.8 that we just saw was probably just a big hit. Here's the guitars. Again, it's just handling control, making sure things don't get out of line. I didn't want a ton of effect from the L4 to be put onto all of the different buses, but we are going to do that. That's the mix bus. Speaking of, let's switch over to the next one. This is our synth bus. Here is the L4 settings that I have going on over here. Teeny tiny amount of reduction, no stereo link, no clipping on the modern mode. Barely doing anything. It really is when the chorus is hit and a little bit later in the song there is an additional synth control. That's all we're doing here, just kind of keeping you in your place. This is where I want you to live. And then we do have another one on our vocals where we're doing a little bit of upward compression. We do have stereo link. We're doing a little bit of attenuation here. This is the vocal settings. And I'll jump forward so we can hear some of the singing and all of the vocal stacks that happen in this song.
Release the pressure, remove all displeasure. Got tricked by your own bluff, though it's never enough.
So you can see it's not doing enough. There was a little bit of a peak that got away in there, and it did some reduction on there, but overall, barely even touching anything. When everything gets really kind of stacked up, especially in the chorus, it gets a little bit closer and maybe does a little bit more reduction, but we're not slamming this at all. So now that we've jumped forward, let's take a listen to all of our buses with L4 on and off. We're going to start with them off, and then we'll click them in after a couple bars.
Release the pressure, remove all displeasure. Got tricked by your own bluff, though it's never enough.
Minor changes, a little bit of things coming up because we do have some upward compression, so we are getting a little bit more perceived level. We're bringing the low levels up, and we still have some reduction on top. So we're just kind of taking that dynamic range and squishing it in a little bit. We're not going crazy at all. Now let's switch over to our mix bus, and I'm going to go to this top one. The top one is just kissing the overall mix. On my mix bus, I do have a little bit of SSL style compression and another tape emulation, again, just giving me some analog flavor. So you'll see this instance of L4, this is my kissing it instance.
Release the pressure, remove all displeasure. Got tricked by your own bluff, though it's never enough. Don't I'm knocking somebody's side, you're still broken.
Barely doing anything, if anything at all. You can certainly get a very transparent kind of sound, especially if you just want to use that upward compression. You can go in here, leave it so that it's just kissing, and kind of bring those lower levels up. Let's do that real fast, and then we'll set it back again.
Release the pressure, remove all this pleasure. Get tricked by your own blood, though it's never enough.
So even though they're not very low in the mix, it's helping those guitars kind of come forward a little bit. And we got a little bit more attenuation. We're now getting up to about 2.5 dB of reduction. But instead of doing this, let's go to our slightly heavier version of L4. Again, all the same settings. Nothing is different other than how much attenuation we're going to be doing. We're shooting for about 3 dB of reduction, pushing the limiter a little bit harder.
Release the pressure, remove all this pleasure. Get tricked by your own blood, though it's never enough.
So again, we're hitting a little bit harder. We're definitely controlling some of those peaks, and it's just limited, and we're not getting anything crazy. About 3 dB of reduction. We have a high point here of -4, but you saw we're getting a little bit more, nothing crazy. Now let's go crazy. Let's get more. Here is our L4 where we're pushing into the L4 really kind of hard. We're getting about 6 dB or more of reduction on this one because we said, heck it, throw it to the wind. Let's just limit. Here it comes.
Release the pressure, remove all this pleasure. Get tricked by your own blood, though it's never enough.
So pushing in really hard. Now remember, on all of our buses, we still have L4 on and active. So we're getting some reduction across all of our buses, and everything adds up to our mix bus. And that's why we have L4 on over here. All right, so we're still on our mix bus. And I want you guys to listen to this. I'm gonna jump between the Kissing It version and the really heavy version. So basically a dB of reduction versus the 6 or more dB of reduction, so that we can really hear how L4 sounds and what it's doing to this mix. So we're starting with the Kiss It version, and then we'll jump over to the really heavy version. I hope you heard that. There are sonic differences in here. Listen to the upper mids. There's almost like a little bit of squish smear that happens up there. It's not bad, not at all, but it's definitely an area to focus in on while you're listening. Now we're going to do one more experiment. I'm going to turn off my Kiss It. I'm going to turn on my really heavy one, select all of my buses, and now I'm going to deactivate my bus L4s, and then I'm going to turn those on and off to show how reduction across your buses can make a big difference on your mix bus and how hard your limiter over there may be working. So I'm going to start with everything off, and we'll see how much attenuation we're going to be getting, and then I'll click everything on, and we'll see how much it actually reduces how much attenuation is happening. So with all of the bus L4s on, there's actually more punch and more level that we're getting because the end limiter is not doing as much clamping down and squishing everything. We have control early, so our control later doesn't have to work as hard, and we can kind of bring things up. Now, let me show you the last thing we're going to go over today is the secret to louder masters. Let's go to our mid. And I'm going to turn on this one where we had about 3 dB of gain reduction. So we're taming those peaks, and we're just going to use upward compression here and get way more level. We're still not clipping our output because our ceiling is set really low. And if we want, we can just bring this up. Keep watching the LUFS meter because that'll tell you in real time what's happening. That is a lot of gain without really doing way much more work. We went from about 3-ish dB of attenuation to about 6 dB of attenuation just by bringing up the low levels. Sure, we're pushing in a little bit more, but we're also not clipping. We can even go crazy. Let's bring this way up. Yes. And now let's adjust ceiling so that we're right under clipping. I think you can see with upward compression and just doing some basic limiting across your buses and across your mix bus, you can get really loud mixes, even without mastering. This is also a great tool to use within mastering because of everything we have. Being able to listen to the delta and hearing if there's any kind of distortion that may be happening. If the upward compression is doing too much work and therefore the limiter's now doing too much work. So all things to take into account and to listen for. So there it is. That is the Waves L4 available right now. So use the link down in the description to pick up a copy for yourself. And if you do, it is an affiliate link, so a little will come back to help the channel, and it's always very much appreciated. I hope you guys enjoyed L4. I want to hear what you're putting this on, and I want to know your opinions on it too. So leave those down in the comments or hop over to the Discord server and we can have an active discussion over there. Until next time, enjoy your limiting, enjoy your ultra maximizing, and happy mixing. See you next time.